On today's episode, we have two city cars from 1980 that both faced the same impossible problem. Your dad probably bought an Austin Metro, thinking British Leyland finally built something to replace the Mini. Modern design, British pride. Or maybe your dad bought a Fiat Panda because Giugiaro's genius meant practical perfection. He explained Italian brilliance at parties. Both cars had the same mission. The Metro had to replace the Mini. The Panda had to replace the 126. Except those siblings refused to die and sold millions. One car fails spectacularly. The other succeeds by accident. This is Four Wheels and Fuel, Season 4, Episode 7. Here we go.
Some of you may have noticed that for the past few years, Britain has been invaded by the Italians, the Germans, the Japanese, and the French. Now we have the means to fight back. The new Austin Metro. The new Metro is so aerodynamic that at a steady 50 miles per hour, the Metro HLE gets 62 miles per gallon. The new Metro has a split-action rear seat to let you choose between more space or more seats. And to help send the invaders back where they came from, the new Austin Metro goes 12,000 miles or 1 full year between services. The new Austin Metro, a British car to beat the world.
Austin Metro. It's the 8th of October, 1980. British Leyland launched the Austin Metro on the MS Vistafjord cruise ship, thinking they built Britain's future. £275 million development cost, 6 years of work, fresh styling, modern engineering, and hydrogas suspension. They called it a British car to beat the world, and showed adverts with Fiat 127s, Renault 5s, VW Polos, and Datsun Cherries labelled as foreign invaders. Your dad paid £3,095 thinking he was buying patriotism on wheels. Except British Leyland had created a massive problem, and they didn't see it coming. The Metro's mission was simple: replace the Mini. The Mini had been on sale since 1959, 21 years of production. Outdated engineering, cramped interior, awful refinement. It had to go. British Leyland started Project ADO88 in 1974 to build its replacement. But customer clinics in 1977 revealed nobody wanted a direct Mini replacement. People loved the Mini too much. So BL redesigned it as LC8, a Super Mini to compete with Europe instead. Harris Mann and David Bache styled it. Alex Moulton engineered the hydrogas suspension. The A-Series engine carried over because BL had no money for new powertrains. The hydrogas suspension was genuinely brilliant engineering. Interconnected, fluid-filled spheres replaced conventional springs and dampers. It gave the Metro a magic carpet ride quality no other Super Mini could match. Flat cornering, excellent comfort, progressive damping. Engineering journalists loved it. British buyers thought it was weird and complicated and probably expensive to fix when it inevitably broke. Because British buyers didn't want clever engineering from British Leyland. They wanted reliability. And BL's reputation for build quality was horrific. Early Metros had carburettor problems that caused poor starting. Rust attacked the sills, wheel arches, and bulkhead. Panel gaps were terrible. Trim fell off. Electrics failed. It was classic British Leyland. Brilliant ideas ruined by appalling execution. But here's where it gets interesting. BL expected to sell 1 million Metros in the first decade. They spent £275 million developing it, the most expensive car development programme in British history at that point. They needed it to succeed because the company was bleeding money and the government was losing patience. Everything depended on the Metro becoming Britain's best-selling car and killing the Mini, so BL could focus resources on one model instead of two. The Metro became Britain's best-selling car by 1984. Over 1 million sold in 10 years. Over 2 million total before production ended in 1998 as the Rover 100. It was a massive commercial success, which is exactly why it completely failed its mission. Because the Mini refused to die. British Leyland kept building Minis alongside Metros because people kept buying them. The Metro was supposed to replace it, but instead became a Fiesta competitor, while the Mini continued as a fashion icon. Two completely different markets, two production lines, double the costs. BL had spent £275 million to create a new problem instead of solving the old one. The Metro sold well, but it never replaced the Mini. When Rover killed Metro production in 1998, the Mini was still going strong. The original Mini outlived its replacement by 2 years, finally ending production in 2000. Mission failed spectacularly. Your dad bought a Metro thinking British engineering had finally beaten the Germans and Japanese. Instead, he bought proof that brilliant engineering and commercial success still count for nothing if you can't kill your own legend. But if Britain failed with £275 million and Hydra gas suspension, Italy was about to prove you can succeed with 15 days of work in Sardinia and absolutely zero pride.
Evitare.
Panda.
Posteggiare.
Panda.
Frenare.
Panda.
Riposare.
Panda.
Cambiare.
Panda.
Scoprire.
Panda.
Caricare.
Panda.
Superare.
Panda.
Risparmiare.
Panda. Panda, sei grande.
Fiat Panda. It's March 1980. Fiat showed the Panda at Geneva Motor Show with one simple mission: replace the Fiat 126. The 126 had been on sale since 1972. 8 years of production, outdated air-cooled twin-cylinder engine, cramped interior, basic everything. Fiat needed something modern to take its place. They gave Giugiaro and engineer Aldo Mantovani a brutal brief. Replace the 126, but don't spend more money, don't weigh more, and absolutely don't steal sales from the 127. Your dad paid £2,860 thinking Fiat had built the 126's replacement. Except the Panda failed to replace the 126 just as badly as the Metro failed to replace the Mini. Summer 1976, Giugiaro and Mantovani spent 15 days in Porto Cervo, Sardinia, working on Project Zero. They drew inspiration from military helicopters. Maximum utility, minimum complexity, brutal honesty. Every decision served function. Flat glass everywhere, including the windscreen, because it was cheaper to manufacture and easier to replace. Hammock seats that were removable and washable. A 7-position rear bench that could be configured for passengers or cargo. Door recessors instead of handles to save money. An asymmetric grille that flipped to accommodate different radiator positions for different engines. It looked absolutely mad. Journalists called it boxy, basic, agricultural. But Giugiaro had designed exactly what Fiat asked for. A simple, cheap replacement for the 126 that wouldn't cannibalize 127 sales. Fiat offered 2 engines at launch. The Panda 30 used the 652 cubic centimeters air-cooled twin from the 126, mounted longitudinally. The Panda 45 used the 903 cubic centimeters water-cooled engine from the 127, mounted transversely. Same running gear as the cars it was supposed to replace. 0 development cost for powertrains. Brilliant cost engineering.
The Panda 45 made 45 brake horsepower, weighed 650 kilos and topped out at 87 miles per hour. Same top speed as the Metro, despite having the same power. Lighter weight, simpler engineering, no expensive hydrogas suspension, just conventional springs, dampers, and Italian pragmatism. Fiat expected the Panda to kill the 126. They got 70,000 orders in the first 2 months. The Panda won the Compasso d'Oro Design Award in 1981. Fashion magazines featured it. Design schools studied it. It became a cultural icon practically overnight. But the 126 refused to die. Budget buyers kept buying 126s. The Panda attracted a completely different customer. People who wanted something more practical than the 126, but cheaper and simpler than the 127. The Panda had accidentally created a new market segment Fiat didn't even know existed. 3 distinct models, 3 distinct customer bases, 0 cannibalization. Here's where Fiat's situation was completely different from British Leyland's disaster. Fiat was profitable. They could afford to build the 126, Panda, and 127 simultaneously because they hadn't spent £275 million developing the Panda, and they weren't bleeding money. The Panda reused the 126's engine and the 127's engine. Development costs were minimal. Building 3 models wasn't a financial catastrophe. It was 3 profit centers. The Fiat 126 continued production until 2000, to 20 years after the Panda launched. The Panda itself stayed in production for 23 years until 2003, selling 4.5 million units. In 1983, Fiat created the Panda 4x4 with Steyr-Puck's system, the first small transverse engine 4-wheel drive car. It opened an entirely new market segment and became a cult classic. Your dad bought a Panda thinking Fiat had replaced the 126. Instead, he bought proof that failing your mission can still be success if you're profitable enough to afford the failure and accidentally create something brilliant in the process. The Panda failed to kill the 126. But unlike the Metro's failure, Fiat could afford it. And that made all the difference. Two city cars, same mission, replace their legendary siblings. Both failed completely. The Metro sold 2 million units and became Britain's best-selling car, but never killed the Mini. British Leyland spent £275 million
creating double production costs they couldn't afford. The company collapsed. The Metro died in 1998. The Mini outlived it by 2 years. The Panda sold 4.5 million units and won design awards, but never killed the 126 either. Fiat was profitable and accidentally created a new market segment instead. The company thrived. The Panda became a 45-year icon across 2 generations. Failing successfully beats succeeding expensively when you're broke. The Panda wins.
British Leyland spent £275 million trying to kill a legend and went bankrupt. Fiat spent almost nothing, failed the same mission, and thrived for 45 years. Sometimes failing successfully beats succeeding expensively. If you enjoyed this episode, hit that subscribe button and tell us which quirky city car your dad drove in the 80s. Buy us a coffee at the link in the description. And on that bombshell, this is 4 Wheels and Fuel, Season 4, Episode 7. See you next time.